It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Welcome to The New Next, a podcast that addresses current events and how they will impact the future.
Finally, the Wagner revolt. We'll have to talk about this more later. It was interesting to see what the experts thought. I entirely disagreed with everything that they said. I literally don't know how a lot of these people are viewed as experts. I find the only time I read news are when events like this happen. It's a little interesting to see the opinions by people that I don't really think understand military strategy at all. This as a revolt or overthrow makes zero sense. I don't know how people could even think that was developing as a potential civil war. Most of the Wagner troops did not support Progression. This guy's, if you had a less stable Donald Trump and gave him control of Blackwater, the military contractor,
Right.
it's not a serious person to lead a country. This reminds me very much of the Erdogan cleaning of all his opponents in, what was that, 2017 or something in Turkey. If you look at the outcomes of this, you have had this entity, Wagner, that's gone around and committed war crimes for years.
Right.
Fully funded by the Russian government. And now Russia is able to take their blood and treasure and say that this guy was a crazy maniac, or at least that's what they pretend to be doing.
Okay.
If you look at where Wagner is operating and where Putin has already said that they're still allowed to operate, because Wagner is not granted the ability to operate legally within Russia. The moment that they crossed from Ukraine into Russia, they were essentially traitors. Wagner is still legally allowed to operate in Africa, which I believe they have outwardly 4 countries that they're actively working with political entities. I believe it's 12 countries total that they have operations in. There's a great Wall Street Journal documentary that they put together lately that I think really just provides a framework if you want to go read the evidence and learn more about themselves. I don't find it biased at all, but it talks about how Wagner has operated in these countries in recent years to trade military and mercenary services for mining concessions. The deal they had with Syria, they got to keep 25% of the revenues from the wells that were pumped. That's a huge amount of revenues. There's all this stuff that has murky ownership that are all in these really key mineral areas that nobody except fuckers like me that look all these complicated information knew that they own this shit over years. And Russia's kind of having a little coming out party, I would say. People are going to start realizing that the whole focus on defeating oil as a funding revenue source for Russia was a flawed strategy because they control all the minerals and they have benefactors. There's a lot of support behind ensuring that Putin stays in power. There's also the backstop behind this that Putin has, he came out, had who knows if this is true or not, because the Russians are masters at deception. And you've got a former FSB operator there, but he was waving a signed peace agreement on it. It was like, we had a Ukraine war peace agreement right here until Boris Johnson flew to Ukraine and then blew up that deal. I think at this point, you have over 250,000 Ukrainian soldiers that have died. You're talking about well over 1 million people that have lost their lives. And if you look at the population for Ukraine since the early 90s, but just really as of recently, they've lost like 10 million people in the last year. And I don't really know what to see here. I saw Prigozhin basically go to Bakhmut, for instance, and treat his men like human cannon fire. And this shit pisses me off.
Yeah.
He lost 20,000 people that should have not died. And I don't care if they're people that were in jails. There's got to be like some respect for human life where you can't just take people out that are literally killers and be like, either you're going to kill all these people, otherwise you're going to die. People with 3 weeks training, and there's a whole generation of Ukrainians that have been killed. I just don't really, it's the whole Cold War ideology blown up in your face. It's a lot of the ESG ideology blown up in their face, and a lot of the funders and creators of that from the financing side, like BlackRock, have denied that, have disowned that in their investor letters recently. So you have a whole system that created a lot of this destabilization where everybody's been like, oh, we screwed up. And it's not a good spot. The West is not doing so well over there. And I don't really know. Having Macron to also ditch the EU and go cozy up with the Chinese, that was some real shit too. I don't really know. I don't watch. I try not to read the news. Like, I'm trying to understand more perspectives of where people are coming from a lot of these things. And I think there's a lot of what I would say borderline. A lot of people are looking for one person to say that this is the boogeyman.
Makes it easier.
Yeah. And us as society enables bad behavior because we're just looking for one person that's, hey, you do this, you figure this out, you're the chosen one. And this allows me to walk away from responsibility in my own community.
If you would like to learn more about the New Next podcast, find us at thenewNextPodcast.com, where you can suggest a topic you would like for us to cover. If you enjoyed what you heard, share the podcast, tell a friend about it, or rate us with 5 stars.